Little Queen Charlotte has just received a major buff alongside an EE, and yes, these changes and their impact are quite game-changing. Here's what you need to know. Her S1 and S3 now automatically crit so long as the attack connects, and her critical hit chance imprint has been replaced with attack, and her soul burn has been changed from reducing the cooldown on S3 to now increasing its hit chance by 100%. Her exclusive equipment also provides up to 14% attack now, while also increasing the damage reduction from her passive. Now, these changes in general now reinforce her role as an answer to evasion and revival units like Setsuka and Arbiter Vildred, while also making her much easier to build. With this, today we'll be covering every part of her buff, her two main builds, her artifacts, and whether these changes are enough to make Little Queen Charlotte relevant again. And so, without further ado, let's begin with her kit B-roll. For her skill 1, Little Queen Charlotte's S1 still attacks one enemy before granting her immunity for a turn, but after the buff, a successful hit, of course, will always result in a crit. Consequently, of course, she no longer needs any crit chance in her build, and every stat previously invested into crit will now be moved into attack, crit damage, speed, or bulk. Of course, this is just a nice flat-out buff for Little Queen Charlotte, but something also worth mentioning here is that as she is now guaranteed to crit, this does mean that she has a pretty good matchup against Elvira if she manages to take the turn and attack, of course. Before we move to her skill 3 changes though, let's actually cover her passive and her new exclusive equipment. To be clear, Charlotte's passive is unchanged in this specific balance adjustment. She's immune to debuffs that prevent movement, and she also offers damage reduction to the entire team, while also offering herself combat readiness if an ally is hit too. Her new exclusive equipment though, a Queen's Responsibility, provides between 7 and 14% attack, and this will also increase the total damage reduction from her passive by an additional 10% when equipped. Now we need to talk about the most important part of her buff though, which is her skill 3. This is still Little Queen Charlotte's main source of damage. She attacks one enemy, penetrates their defense by 50%, recovers HP depending on how much damage that she deals, and she also inflicts extinction if the target is defeated on hit. Now, as usual though, when the selected target is dark, her damage is increased and she deals additional attack scaling damage to every other enemy. After this buff though, again, a skill 3 will always result in a crit hit, which means that you can of course avoid building crit rate, as I touched on earlier. Combined with the same change on skill 1, this completely removes again crit chance being needed at any point in her build, and the base damage of skill 3 has also been increased, though the bonus damage that she has against dark targets has actually been reduced. This of course means that the exact impact of her damage will depend on the target, but the stats gained from her new imprint, EE, and freed crit chance rolls should definitely increase her overall damage considerably. That said, her soul burn still costs 10 souls, though of course the effect has changed, and overall, though she technically loses the cooldown reduction on the skill 3, with how her kit currently works, I think this is a worthwhile trade-off. The current state of LQC though has her being built two separate ways though. To be clear, this is either a slow or fast build, and in terms of stats, Little Queen Charlotte's main stats are attack, critical hit damage, speed, HP, and defense. Now, going specifically into builds, the first variation that you have is the traditional base speed option. This version focuses on maxing attack, critical hit damage, health, and defense while investing very little into speed, but the goal here is to survive until her turn, remove an important target with skill 3, and recover a large amount of HP through its lifesteal. Destruction Set is the most obvious option for this build, with Pen Set being the standard 2-piece option for increasing her single target damage. You generally want a critical hit damage neck, an attack ring, and attack boots though, but to be clear, this version fits best in turn 2 teams capable of protecting her until she moves. The second build variant is a faster one at around 220 or higher speed. This version sacrifices some raw damage and bulk, but allows Little Queen Charlotte to function in cleave and teams that focus on taking turn 1. Speed Set with this is generally the easiest option for reaching this threshold, although fast destruction gear can also work. You'll also use a critical hit damage necklace in this setup, an attack ring, and speed boots, but as a reminder, if you are using her on Destruction Set, the speed on the pieces that you'll be looking for are quite high in the double digits. Now, this faster version though can move after your opener or combat readiness pusher and immediately remove a priority target before the enemy team has the chance to respond. Now let's move to her artifact choice, though this does mostly depend on whether another unit is already providing an attack buff. With this, the most common artifact for Little Queen Charlotte is Benimaru's Tachi. At max rank, this guarantees immunity at the beginning of the first battle and gives her an attack buff at the start of her turn as long as she isn't debuffed. The attack buff is also important because Little Queen Charlotte doesn't provide one for herself, and this is most important of course as her main role is dealing enough damage to remove a priority target in one hit. The initial immunity that she has also protects her from getting debuffed that aren't necessarily covered by her passive before she gets the chance to use her skill 1 or skill 3, and this makes Tachi the most complete and general option for both the slow and 220 plus speed builds. Alternatively, of course, you could use Thorn of the Blue Rose, which is a more niche alternative when a unit already provides an attack increase. That said, this grants 10 souls at the start of battle, which happens to be exactly enough to activate her new skill 3 soul burn without needing a mage holding Tagahel's ancient book or some other soul artifact. This also increases her damage and provides an additional damage increase when she uses her soul burn. This pairs perfectly, of course, when you already already have an attack buff covered and you're looking to use LQC's Soulburn S3 to hit an evasion unit. Next, however, let's take a look at LQC in PvP. As we touched on earlier, Charlotte's main role is removing evasion threats like Setsuka and Bellona, while Extinction and her dark target damage makes her a strong answer to specifically Arbiter Vildred. The base B build works primarily as a bulky damage dealer in turn 2 teams, and otherwise she can be played with Fire Biblis and Boss Harunka and just be protected until she's able to extinct the main carry while basically being virtually unkillable or even targetable. This also works well because her passive combat readiness increase provides enough tempo for her to actually be a threat despite being base speed. But as for the 220 plus build, this is designed for teams of course that can take turn 1 or push up your team through some other means. As a result, she can be paired with characters like Fire Litika or Faithless Litika, who was recently buffed, or basically any other opener that combat readiness pushes. This may be where Blue Rose is most effective though, as you could also run a character like Frida to finish bridging or run her faster on Tachi if you want to tune her with your opener. At worst, for the speed build, her passive and exclusive equipment still give value even when she's not immediately using her skill 3, and with all that we've just touched on, now would be a good time to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the buff. Of course, the best part about this buff is how much easier Little Queen Charlotte is to build, as again removing crit chance does allow you many other roles. That said, the new Soulburn is also very nice for giving her a new niche in being able to eliminate dark evasion units, or even evasion units in general. That said though, she does still have 50% defense pen, extinction, self-healing, dark target splash damage, and movement prevention immunity, and honestly, this is a lot. She's also pretty flexible in having 2 build options. That said, her main weakness of course is that she has no real self-push or no self-attack buff without running Tachi, and though she technically has this covered either by getting hit or of course using an artifact, this is still technically an obstacle or an issue that you may have to play around, so keep this in mind if you're playing LQC. Overall though, Little Queen Charlotte is definitely much better after this update. Her gear requirements are much lower, the fact that she can be built in 2 separate ways is pretty strong, and if you already own her, she's definitely worth rebuilding or at least testing. That said, Little Queen Charlotte is already popping up in one of the stronger options in RTA at the moment, and as you'd imagine, she's pretty good at punishing characters like Bellona or Arbiter Vildred, and this leaves her in a pretty good spot, especially since she kind of does what Tori used to do against RB and Bellona, but does it much better now of course. Thanks again for watching though guys, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed or learned something from today's video, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.